Let me know when we're on. Okay. Hello. Hello. Oh, I'm going to share this with the golden flower. All right. Golden flower. Yeah, Facebook was asking me if I wanted to share with the golden flower. I said yes. So, I want to talk a little bit more about the tonal today, the human world, this simulation we create. This simulation we create together and we call the world. All right, so let's begin with the assertion that all knowledge is theoretical, right? That means that anything that you believe to be true is simply that. You believe it to be true. That does not mean that all beliefs are equal, because you all have some stupid beliefs.
So true.
We all do, right? But there are beliefs that are useful to us, right? Like the belief that when you go to work, you get money and you can use the money to pay the rent. That's useful. The belief that you eat healthy and that tends to give you better health. Okay. There's actually no proof of that, but it's a useful belief. You get up in the middle of the night, it's dark. You go into the bathroom and you step into the bathroom and you turn the light on so you can see. Right. See, what happens there is that you got up and you assume that the map that you have of the layout of the house is still valid. You assume that when you stepped into the bathroom, there is going to be a floor there, just like it was the last time and the last few thousand times that you have stepped into it. You hit the switch, believing that the light is going to come on. If the light doesn't come on, you think that something is wrong with the light bulb or the electricity or something like that. And then you proceed to make the adjustments that you need to make. Now, if you don't have those beliefs, you're not going to step into the room because you don't know what's there. You see your brother, your sister, your child in the hallway. You say hi. You assume they know you. You assume that is the same person that has always been in that body. And you don't question that unless there are reasons to question that. Now, what's happening is this. Any biological species has a perceptual system, a system of sensory perception, a nervous system that is designed to receive impressions from the world and transforming those into bioelectrical signals, which in the brain are used to create a simulation of the world outside. And every biological sentient being is doing this. The ants, the bees, the elephant and the birds, the human being, we all do that. We all exist in an unknown universe and we are living through a body that is creating theoretical simulations of the universe. Now, the more complex the brain and the nervous system, the more nuanced and rich the senses used to perceive the world, the more complex is the world that we're going to create. The eyes receive impressions of light, the ears, sounds, the skin, changes in temperature, perceptions of energy, things like that. And we're putting all of it together to create a map of the universe around us. It's theoretical. It's always theoretical. It doesn't matter how accurate or how effective or how consistent your experience is, it is only theoretical. You see a red apple and someone told you that that is good to eat, so you take it, you eat it, your taste buds tell you that it is good. And then you see another red apple in another place and you expect it to taste kind of the same. And it kind of does, right? And you tell your friend, that red fruit right there, it tastes really good. Go try it. Now, when you say that red fruit over there, you are assuming that their experience of red is the same as your experience of red. Maybe the impression that you have of red, I receive as you perceive the green. There's no way to know that. Because everything that you see as red, I'm going to call it red. And so we'll be in agreement. Is that apple red? Yes, yes. Is the light red? Yes. The test is that when that light is red, when you see the light turning red, I am going to do the same thing that you do. Speed up if there are no cops. That shows that that color that I perceive is you are responding to it the same way, but I have no way of knowing if what I perceive as red, that color, the quality of that color, is the same that you call red. All we have is a language that tells us that we are communicating and we are reaching agreements. And in this language that we create, we say things like good, bad, pain, joy, happiness, truth, despair. Now, what has happened is that just like every biological sentient being is creating a map of the universe, where they move, live, reproduce, die, eat. And when they reproduce, they create another very similar creature that is going to perceive the world more or less the same. And then some species pass on knowledge to another. The wolf teaches the cubs how to behave, how to hunt. The mama gorilla teaches the baby gorilla how to behave, what to be afraid of, when to play. Because the species, the group, has come to try many different things. And they have settled on things that seem to work for the species, for that type of body, for that type of community, for that type of nervous system. Now, we, on top of this biological human nervous system that is receiving impressions of the world, creating the three-dimensional hallucination that we call reality, a hallucination where my brain adds color to the shades to the light that is coming into my eye. As I've said many times, there is no such thing as color in nature. There is only color in your perception of it. But in addition to this simulation that we are creating of a physical world, we are also creating another world, the human world, and they are different, they are distinct. And by the way, this world that we create, many people call it now the 3D, is not truly, they are not truly talking about the same world that I live in. Most people believe that the physical world already exists independently of our perception of it, as if the world is set with all its colors, sounds, and experiences, and the human body simply grows in it and learns to perceive it. There is some truth in that. Some. Only in the sense that when I am born and I discover this body with this nervous system, I am encountering something that is out there. The difference between what I just said and what they believe is that they think that this solid world of things and colors and shapes exists without us. It does not. What exists without us is a apparently chaotic maelstrom of energy, of flow and radiation, of subatomic strange behavior. And then we are born. And by we, I don't mean only the human being, but all creatures of sentience. And we all together begin to create this solid world. Let me give you a simple example. This cup, which is not my cup, obviously. This cup, okay, seems to me warm because there is a warm beverage in it, and it seems solid to me. I can't put my finger through it. And it has different shades of brownish color and copper color inside, and bluish green inside. It has some interesting shapes. This cup, right? But see, this cup, scientists tell me, it's made of atoms, just like my hands are made of atoms. Now, the molecular structure of my hand is different than the molecular structure of the cup, because there are different elements that have come together to form my hand, different elements to come together to form the cup. But what that means is simply this. The atoms that form my hand have a specific number of protons in the nucleus and corresponding number of electrons as an orbit. So does the cup, different numbers, right? And that's the difference. It's a numerical difference. But the atoms in the cup are also made of a nucleus with a specific number of protons and electrons around it. All the atoms have that in the cup, and all the atoms in my hand has that. Right? And yet, my hand and the cup seem completely different to me. Now, I also know that the distance between the nucleus of each atom in this cup and every electron in the cup is a vast distance. If you can grow the nucleus to be the size of a basketball, then the electron would be running around somewhere at the outskirts of a stadium. And most of the space in this cup is empty. Most of it is empty. Most of this body is water. His body is made of mostly water. The rest of it is pure hotness, but more water than hotness. You look surprised, but it's true. But see, the water in my body is mostly empty space, and everything else in my body is mostly empty space. Most everything in this cup is empty space. And every animal that you see out there, and every tree and house and weapon is mostly empty space. Empty. And the weird thing is that most of the things you see are made of those two particles, protons and electrons. And supposedly, all the protons are pretty much the same, just a positively charged particle. And all electrons are pretty much the same, just a negatively charged particle. So that's what we have all around us. Three main type of particles: positive, negative, and neutral. Then there are a whole bunch of other particles that we don't have time to get into. But the truth is that most of what we perceive around us is just an empty space. And the body that you have that is perceiving that, the eye that receives the light that comes in, is also made of atoms. Now I'm going to correct something I said before. Most of what you see around you is not those particles. You don't see the electrons. You don't see the protons. You don't see the atoms. And you don't see the molecules. Okay. What you see, and in fact, you don't see the chairs and the trees and the birds and the blue sky. What you see is photons, particles of light, which are also particles that bounce off the surface of an object and they come and hit the eye. like a big pizza pie. That's amore. But see, when I say that, when I see the cup, what I'm really seeing is an electron that bounced off the surface of the cup and hit my eye. That's not quite true. There is no surface in that cup. There is mostly empty space with some tiny bumps of energy. And the light enters those subatomic spaces and is expelled out. Particle of light expelled out, and then it gets into my eyes. So think of the cup as a conglomerate of a network of energy bonded together, held within this vast emptiness. All right, but then when it hits my eye, all these photons, my eye receives an impression of light, and it sends that impression through my optical nerve. Now it doesn't send the photons. The photons do not enter me. I enter the photon. No. There is an impression received in the optical nerve, and the optical nerve then fires bioelectrical particles. It's fired them from one neuron to the other. A neuron receives these bioelectrical charges that my body is creating. See, I'm not taking anything from outside. It hits my eye. Boom. And my nervous system just sends electrical particles boom, into the next neuron, and they send one after the other until it gets to the base of my brain, and my brain then does a weird thing. My brain grabs all the impressions at the base, all the impressions that my eyes receive, and my ears, and my skin, and anything that hits my nervous system and my body. See? And also all the signals that my body is sending inside. All the chemicals and hormones and the millions of bacteria and viral colonies that coexist in my body completely unaware of me and my human world, just living their best life inside me. Okay? And my brain is receiving all of that, and then my brainstem says, okay, that's too much, guys. Tone it down. Too much noise here. I'm just going to let some impressions in. Okay. And they let some impressions in. Maybe a few photons sneak in like illegal immigrants to create some havoc in my brain. But most of that's pretty well controlled. So, not only I am perceiving mostly empty space outside, I receive very little data from the world. Just the photons that are bouncing and disturbances in the air that create tiny bursts of vacuum that hit my a hammer and hit the drum in my ear, and that little bone, that tiny bone hits another bone in my ear. That's the sound that you hear. You're not hearing sound from outside. You hear the sound in your ear. There are bursts of air that hit your tiny bone in your ear, and that tiny bone is hitting another bone, and that tapping is received as sound, and then the brain creates the richness of sound that you experience. Now the world is mostly empty, but there is a vast, infinite ocean of light and vibration outside. A very small part of it is received by the body, and an even smaller part of that is sent to the brain, and the brain gets rid of most of it and just takes the impressions that it's going to use to build your world, the universe that you see around you, with all its richness and color and sound and life and vibration and all the energy that you perceive, because I know you are so good at perceiving energy. All that energy is just a tiny fraction of what is out there. Now, this unknown that is outside, it's being experienced by this thing that you call the body. But your body is just another simulation that is being created in this universe. It is made of the same stuff, the same vibrant dance. Of light. But you receive impressions of it. And that's your body. The impressions that the brain is classifying as myself. So, you are light, corrugated, self-referent, corrugation of light, creating a simulation of a three-dimensional universe. The shaman must understand that there is no such thing as a human being who goes up into the higher dimensions. Shaman is nothing but some cosmic consciousness descending into this temporal corrugation of vibrant light, to have a human experience. Or an animal experience, a plant experience, a planetary experience. In this natural world that we create with this system, where we include the physical body, there is also all these other creatures, the two-legged, the winged, the no-legged, the microbial. And together we are co-creating this curious temporal gravitational well that we call planet Earth. Now remember, planet Earth is mostly empty. Some energy trapped around it. How is this energy trapped around it? It's not through. It's not by gravity, because gravity has no effect on subatomic particles. No effect whatsoever. It only has effect on massive quantities of mass. But mass is the lumping together of three-dimensional things. But we know they are made of mostly empty space and some energy patterns keeping it together. So what is this gravity keeping things together? Someone's calling us on Instagram. Just like what is keeping your body together. What is keeping your body together? Your body is made of light and energy, meshing around empty space with lots of holes in between. But what keeps it together? Well, if my body is mostly empty space and this cup is mostly empty space, why can't I go through? Why can't I walk through the wall? Well, I can if I have a door. But other than that, it's painful. Why? It's not because it's solid. Because it's not really. It's empty. But what's happening is that my hand has electrons, right? Negatively charged. And the wall, and the cup, and the chair, and the floor also has atoms that have electrons. And because the electrons of the wall is negative and the electrons of my hand is negative, they reject each other. That sensation of solidity, it's simply the effect of electromagnetic behavior. But that's the thing. I experience it as a solid wall. And as long as I have this body that is receiving information this way and creating this simulation of nature, I'm going to experience things as solid, liquid, gaseous. I'm going to experience heat and cold. And I'm going to experience heights and lows. And I'm going to experience pain and pleasure. And then I'm going to communicate with other creatures with signals that I learned to use from the human beings who adopted me when I was born. And I'm going to learn to see the world the way they saw it. And so I form sounds that are taken by other humans as words. And these words have meaning. But they only have meaning in this human world that we have created. And we talk. And we signal. And we communicate. And we pay attention. And we learn to navigate not only the physical world, but also the human world. I walk around my house encountering objects, and I just walk past them, but I see another person, I relate differently to the person. And then we learn to react to other words, like God, country, angel, devil, good, bad, dangerous, foreign. And we assign values. And we are aware of the nuances of values in the different communities we belong to. Which means that to create the world is not enough that we receive sensory impressions of the world. That does not form a world. What forms a world is a network of concerns. Concerns are the various degree of importance we assign to signals. To impressions, and therefore to words and concepts. This world of concerns we navigate. And with this world of concerns, we create the human experience, the religious experience, the poetic experience, the artistic experience, the scientific enterprise. It is because of this world of concerns that we can communicate with each other, create meaning, gather consensus. Consensus is simply the agreements we make to see the world one way or the other. And this consensus is being built with concerns. Through words, through sharing experiences, through narratives. But here comes part of the trick that we pull to create ourselves. There can be no concern without a self. Without the self, nothing can have more importance than anything else. If one signal is more important, more present, has more weight, more gravity than another signal, is because there is a center, completely theoretical, not real at all, just a function of this instrument of perception that makes this perceptual system behave as if it is important. I am concerned. I have concerns. I experience hunger, and so food becomes important. I experience pain, and that signals different degrees of importance. And that's just from the physical perspective. When we enter the human world, then there are other concerns that have to do not with the importance of the body, but the importance of a mask, a character that I have created to navigate this human world. I created this corrugation, temporal corrugation of light, to be able to navigate the natural world by creating a centrifuge of concerns around it. The centrifuge of concerns is the will to live. Is what makes me grab things, ingest them, digest them, dissect them, destroy them, separate them, evacuate them, and some of it transform it into more of this body. But the complexity of this human nervous system has also created the tonal, the human world that is made up of language, a language that navigates a vast array of concerns about who I am, what I experience, what people say about me, what I say about people. And it wants to be heard, to be loved, to be ignored, to be left alone, to be given importance, to be not given importance, given responsibilities, to not have responsibilities. All the units of experience of this human world that we have created through hundreds of thousands of years of human civilization that is passed on through language and culture and tribal behaviors and news. I don't say fake news because there is no other kind. All news are simply impressions in the network, this electronic network, in the tonal that enters the brain as signals. It is inside this brain where I have created my character, my human character, that is going to be interpreting these signals, assigning different levels of truth and importance based on not only what I believe about the world, but what I assume about myself. And from there I say, this is true, this is false. This I don't care about. Now let me tell you something that will become clear if this talk is followed carefully. All and any permanent belief is an obstacle for the consciousness that is attempting to create a vehicle capable of manifesting cosmic intelligence. How so, you ask? The animal body is capable of creating a natural world by processing the little information it receives into the hallucination, into the simulation of the universe. But it's not going to create a human world until it can process another, or are you calling bullshit on this? Is that a little bit? Okay. There's a little bit of bullshit in this, yeah. It's not until you can have the type of nervous system that creates a network of concerns capable of producing language and the human world. So we have to create a simulation of the human world, which again is made of concerns. The concern the child has for the parents and the siblings and the friends and the toys and the dangers and the fears and the learning of the language and the excitement of learning new words. And then entering the social world of friends and boyfriends and girlfriends and drama and companionship and marriage and old age and work and meaning and significance and importance. All part of the same realm. All completely minute and useless for the infinite consciousness that finds itself temporarily swirling around this consciousness, swirling around this nervous system, moving and navigating this simulation of a human world. So the animal who has created a semi-solid world, a natural world, has to make something loose to create the human world. In other words, we have to be flexible enough to create our games, our human games, and give importance to them. There will be no human world without creating imaginary borders, yes, but those are one of the things we do. Create imaginary borders, create symbols, create words that praise and offend, create poetry and art and music that elevates or subjugates, create different types of expressions and oppressions and relationships that do not exist in nature. We have to make believe certain things. We have to create lies like nationality and religion and race, none of which exist in the natural world. And it's not that those things are necessary. What is necessary is the agreements, the games. We don't have to play the racial game. We don't have to play the national game. We don't have to play the cultural war game. We don't have to play the game of oppression. Those are games that have been created in this movement of concern by the people who have wanted to accumulate power, money, influence, pass it on to others. We pass it on by culture, by education, by language, by propaganda. One of the elements that have been made so toxic to the human being is belief. Now, remember, every knowledge is theoretical. So belief as a temporary understanding of the universe is necessary. Belief as a solid assertion that is more important than perception is toxic. So believing in the world, that the world is this way or that way, is one thing. But to believe a dogma, to believe in a God or in a saint or in a spiritual entity without evidence and contrary to evidence gets us stuck in the human world. To believe that you already understand everything gets you solid, stuck, and therefore not nimble. The evolutionary step for the human being to transcend the ego, to transcend that solid belief that is dogma, implies losing oneself, loosening oneself, and loosening your belief, which really has to be experienced as letting go of your knowledge, letting go of that which you believe to be true. This is known as loosening the world. It's done simply by knowing, understanding that all knowledge is theoretical, that there is nothing solid and stable about nature, and nothing true and absolute about ideas and words. You still use them because you're navigating this world. You still use the simulation your brain is creating of nature. But you don't believe that what you experience is the truth about nature. That's how we develop science. And you navigate the human world, which is a world that has created the conception of self of everyone around you, and even your own. But don't believe it for a second. Know that this is a drama, a play, that this is a game, that language is a game. When you understand it as a game, then not only you can free yourself from the dogma, you can also use the game to receive more, to access more, to tolerate more consciousness, more understanding. It is in the elimination of dogmas and solid ideas that we are able to move to the next stage of evolutionary consciousness. It was by creating the human world that we were able to loosen up the solid perception of nature. And now it is by letting go of the seemingly solid human world that we can raise this character that we have created in the world, in the tonal, to receive more from animal self to human self to cosmic self. It implies the ability to play games, but to not get stuck in the belief that you know the truth. Don't even believe that you know the truth about yourself. How to do that? We'll continue to talk about it next week, if you remind me. Yes?
2 questions online.
Yeah.
One of them is from Rohit. says, if we create simulation, 3D reality, external world, based on our impression that we receive, so does that mean if we experience pain and suffering, it is because we receive corresponding lower impression, and that if we work towards receiving higher impression, we can create the simulation and 3D reality of peace, love, and prosperity?
Well, you would receive higher suffering. So you can experience suffering of nature, which is simply your nervous system sending signals that are unpleasant to you because you cut your skin or you have a tumor. That's suffering. In the human world, you receive suffering when someone insults you, when the person you love does not love you back, when you are ashamed to the world, when you base your whole ego in the knowledge that you were just going to be president a second time, and now you're a loser. Okay? But it turns out you were always a loser. You know? And you've never experienced love, so you have to do all this crazy stuff. You know, you turned yourself orange. You became a troglodyte. And you don't know what to do to get some respect. But that's suffering in the human world. Right? And then when if you stop putting your attention there in the human world, and the physical pain can be transcended somehow, then you will be experiencing the higher consciousness and higher radiations that will produce spiritual suffering. Which is what the Kabbalist calls sorrow. And sorrow and joy are truly the same thing. Because in the higher realms, there is really no such thing as peace. It's a storm out there. There is movement, change. There is an explosion of 1,000 suns. Peace is only the experience of temporarily gliding through realms of existence. There is a saturation of time, consciousness, and experience that is never ending. There is not an elimination of suffering. There is an acceptance of it. And even a moment when you actually like it. Because you want to experience more. What's the other question?
The other is from an individual whose name here is Ancient Initiate. And it's a two-part question.
I haven't seen that guy since ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's back with questions.
I thought let that guy buried under the Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah.
How did you get out?
Well, he's just informed us he's got a new alias, Adrian Pineda.
Oh, okay. That one, yes, it's the same guy.
Yeah.
But Adrian Pineda, yeah, it's better looking than the mummy self. What is the comment or the question?
This has got two parts. It says,
Uh-huh.
speaking of planets, could it be that the 7 planets, along with the moon, act as a database of sorts,
Mm-hmm.
that although appear to be external are actually found inside us?
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
continues,
Go ahead.
and the influence of these planets affect our consciousness because they emanate various bands of information that force us into consensus here on Earth?
Yes. See what one of the I was debating earlier whether the topic of today's talk was going to be astrology or ego. It turned out to be neither one. It was a tonal, right? But I thought of astrology because of that same question. I don't see astrology in terms of external planets having an influence in your body and in your mind. Okay. Not at all. And I hear explanations of gravitational effects and how the moon pulls the water and how the planets are singing like striking bells and and frequencies and all of that. None of that makes sense to me as far as astrology is concerned. Because, number one, astrology doesn't really tell you where those constellations are now. And when you try to change them to match what is there, it's just an act of futility. The situation is much simpler, and one day I'm going to talk about astrology more in depth. We perceive the movements of the planets as we perceive the movements of the sun and the moon, right? And that, remember, is the simulation that our brain creates. And those movements observed by the masses have an influence in how we are building our mind, our perceptual apparatus. They have an influence, yes. It's not a physical influence. The patterns of movements and the attention we place on them, that has an effect in how we perceive the world, in how our mind is formed, and how we respond to each other and to ourselves. So yes, it is internal. We see it outside. We see it as if outside. Now, the world is out there, like Pablo says. The world is out there, and we perceive it. Pablo is there. But what we perceive as the world is our reaction to what is out there. we don't get to really see the world as it is. We see the simulation that we have created. When we create something like science that can go beyond the senses, then we perceive more because we extend our mind to the instruments of observation, to mathematics, to calculus, to trigonometry, to lenses, telescopes and microscopes, and to the language of science that can describe, predict, and therefore understand more about the world than the senses can create. We used to use the ideas of gods, orishas, poems, epic stories, and all of that to be able to understand more than what we could see. And again, the difference is that science knows, or should know. It is theoretical, and therefore always changing, always evolving. People think that this means that science is always wrong. Yes, but the wisdom of it, like Socrates says, is that science knows it is always wrong. Religion forgets that it is wrong, but it is just as wrong as science and as wrong as everything else. But is it useful? If it's useful, use it. And that doesn't mean that theoretical knowledge is just as good as lies. No. Lies is a completely different move. Observation, hypothesis, science, even the mystical experience can be very useful if we are honest. But fake conspiracy theories, false news, lies, propaganda, those are an attempt to influence the formation of the world in another. Dogma is an insistence that my creation of the world should conform to a lie. It gets me stuck, so I need to get rid of that. Get rid of your dogma. Just get rid of it. Just stop it. And if you find that, but isn't it interesting that, no, stop it. You know? But you're just doing your own research and things don't add up for you. Well, cool. But don't hold on to a stupid theory just so that they add up. They don't add up. They don't add up. You know, keep looking. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Lost Horizon clarified the situation with Ancient Initiate and Adrian Pineda. He says he's obviously an old geezer by now.
Yes, old and wise, Giza. Okay, Pablo says, is trying to get more consciousness beyond the beliefs and sensorial world what you mean when you say to put your attention towards the inside, or is it still not your true self? The placing your attention towards yourself is a trick. Okay. It's a trick to allow the architecture of the world you have created to loosen itself up, and to and to direct the attention towards a place where you often do not. The mind or the brain is used to trying to look at the world outside, because that's how we learned as children, right? But to be able to look at the perceptual apparatus itself, as philosophy, neuroscience, psychology, and meditation do, is to begin to understand more and more about the perceptual apparatus, and then even more about the source of oneself. The ego that we have formed, and we'll talk more about this another day, the ego that we form is a reaction that the child has to the world. We form a personality to deal with the complexity of the human world. That personality that you have and that everybody has is simply the mechanism that you have created to manage the complexity of the human world. The actions that you have in your tribe to survive is the reaction your body has to nature. That's how we learn to make food, to hunt, to fight, and to align ourselves with natural cycles. At one point, you may discover that the whole universe, with its vast mysteries, is the reaction of the pure consciousness of God to finding itself trapped in this infinite play of light and vibration, trapped in this electrical storm we had to create the game of existence, lifetimes, experience. A self. A home. So we're gonna end here. Are there any questions there? No, any more over there?
Just a last comment from Lost Horizon. It says,
Always, Lost Horizon and Wilson Cloud Chamber, they always have to, you always have to tell me what they say, so I can know what not to say.
here's what not to say. Richard Freeman said that a good shorthand definition of science is disbelief in the knowledge of experts.
Yeah. I like to say that the true scientist knows that there's no way of knowing. And has created this method for continuing to investigate and to avoid dogma. We need to keep avoiding dogma. There was a question here I need to address. If we redirect our attention, doesn't mean that thing is not happening, like murders or abuse, etc. Does that have to do with my perception? All of that is happening. Racism, abuse, oppression in the human world. And we need to act against it. But when you act, do not for a second believe that that is the true human condition. Fight with the enemy. Obliterate the enemy. Change all that. Do not believe for a second that you are a prisoner of that. See, if you're playing chess, you're gonna make the moves and win or lose. Just because it's just a game doesn't give you the permission to relax. You're playing this game. And if you're perceiving injustice, you're in that game. You are in that game. I despise the attitude in me that would ever have me say, I am above politics. I don't get myself involved in those lower concerns. The second I do that, I want you all to slap me hard until I bleed. I want my nose flowing with blood. The second I say that I am above that. No. If I perceive another being suffering injustice, I fight. Because I'm in the game. My game is of evolution, of freedom. And I cannot conceive of my own freedom without yours. Without your freedom. I cannot. Impossible for me. I understand too much about the formation of the tonal to believe that I myself am real enough that I'm going to be liberated and free and go to heaven or anywhere, nirvana, to be enlightened, as if that has any importance whatsoever. That's just another game, which I can play too, and I do. But I am here. And if I'm here, I am surrounded with a vast and unknown mystery. So I'm going to be responding. And the way that you respond with integrity and care is much more important than being right and being knowledgeable. Much more important than being free and enlightened and powerful. Learn to be impeccable in the midst of madness. Because that's what we are. We are the reflection of a God that is going mad in the infinity of its own creation. It's got to be impeccable. I hope it is. Yeah, con huevos.